Settle in, and let the room grow quiet as your breath finds a slow, familiar rhythm. This will be a gentle lesson wrapped in night, a slow journey with no need to rush, where learning and rest move together like a tide. Imagine the world before, our own cities and humming roads, when Earth turned under an ancient sky and the air tasted of resin and rain. Picture yourself near a shoreline where the ocean is calm as glass, the sand stamped by soft ripples, the moon laying a silver path that asks nothing of you. Breathe deeply and let your shoulders loosen. Feel the weighted blanket comfort of safety and warmth. We are stepping into the Mesozoic, a greenhouse world of fern canopies and conifer silhouettes, a place that feels timeless because seasons wander slowly and evenings linger. You do not have to think hard. You can simply listen and drift and let go, while the story unfolds at a steady pace. Starlight settles on the water like quiet thoughts. In this restful night, our aim is simple: to sense what Earth felt like when dinosaurs lived, not as a loud spectacle, but as an endless living backdrop. The continents lean into one another like old friends, and shallow seas wander across lowlands where reeds whisper and horsetails draw delicate shadows on mud. Fern after fern lifts lacework fronds, and the wind moves through them with a soothing hush, as if the planet were breathing with you. If a term appears, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, it arrives softly, like a lantern on a path, offering a gentle outline rather than a test. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a glassy lagoon, the warm air scented with ginkgo and pine, while quiet waves tip shells and smooth stones into tidy rows. The world feels eternal here, and the hours expand as if time itself were a friendly room with soft walls and patient light. Drift a little, rest in the cadence. Let your thoughts pass by like clouds across starlight. We will keep a predictable rhythm: ancient, ocean, fern, starlight. Phrases that return like small anchors so your mind can float without getting lost. When I say ancient, feel the length of millennia as a comforting distance. When I say ocean, hear the hush that steadies your heartbeat. When I say fern, see green shade, layered over green, cool and kind. When I say starlight, notice how brightness can be tender, never sharp. Breathe deeply and allow each sentence to stretch and fold like a slow wave across sand. If thoughts knock at the door, you can smile and send them walking down the beach. You are supported, unhurried, and quietly curious, learning through images rather than numbers, through warmth rather than urgency. Picture yourself, if you like, sitting where conifer branches frame the sky, amber light slipping between needles in gentle bands. The coast, the forest, the air, each one invites rest, and each one says there is no need to rush. As the tide of time draws back, we step onto a wider, ancient coast. Settle in, and let this section give you a wide, gentle map to rest inside. A calm picture of the world as it once was, arranged for learning that feels like breathing. We are not rushing anywhere. We are simply arriving slowly, where the continents were gathered, where warm seas lifted soft light into the sky, and where forests spread like green quilts across low coasts. Imagine the supercontinent Pangaea as a broad ancient table, its edges brushed by the ocean, its center carrying deserts and river fans, its margins stitched with lagoons and quiet bays. Picture yourself floating high above that world, seeing the outlines with easy eyes, the stone and water and wind working together in rhythms older than stories. As you breathe deeply, feel your shoulders loosen and your jaw unclench, and let the first anchor settle. Ancient. The word is a soft doorway, not a test. Tonight it means take your time. Let the mind wander kindly. Listen to a past that hums like a seashell. This is a slow journey with no need to rush, a guided drift through deep time where understanding lands like starlight on still water. Now, without weight or worry, we'll describe the air and seasons in simple language, the way you might speak of weather to a friend beside a window. The Mesozoic was a greenhouse climate, which does not mean a single temperature everywhere, but rather a general warmth, longer warm seasons and winters that felt mild across many belts of land. Think of the world wrapped in a soft, transparent cloak. Heat held the way a greenhouse holds light, so that monsoon rains could sweep steadily across low plains, and evenings lingered with the hush of crickets along reed beds. Some regions wore desert colors and distant mirage, while others kept river braids and floodplains like silver threads laid over ochre cloth. If plate tectonics ever sounds technical, let it be a picture instead. Plates as slow rafts, continents as patient travelers, moving a fingernail's width each year, yet adding up to journeys that redraw the face of Earth. Breathe deeply to a quiet count. Inhale for 4, exhale for 6, and let your heart follow the count as if it were a tide. Sliding over sand, the anchors return. Ocean, fern, starlight, steady lights to find again and again. From that high view, you can watch Pangaea loosen into 2 great lands, Laurasia in the north, Gondwana in the south, while the Tethys Ocean opens like a satin ribbon between them. Imagine coastlines unfurling, imagine bays forming gentle crescents. Imagine inland seas flooding shallow basins where sunlight reached the bottom and turned the water a soft teal. On bare flats, the mud cracked into tidy polygons as the sun dried yesterday's tide, and when the water returned, it combed the surface into neat ripple marks that read like handwriting left by wind. Volcanic plains darkened some horizons, but even those lava fields weathered into soils that invited green life. The sky wore slate on some days and pale pearl on others, and storms traveled predictable roads, bringing gentle rainfall that filled estuaries and braided rivers that carried silt to the sea. If you listen, you can almost hear the low breath of the planet. Atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, lithosphere, air, water, life, and stone, taking turns and sharing weight. like four friends carrying one hammock. Ancient, ocean, let those words keep you steady. Pause, come closer now, softly, to the plants that gave the land its textures and its fragrances. Before petals swept the world with color, the forests leaned toward gymnosperms, conifers with needle canopies, cycads with armored crowns, bennettitails with rosette heads, ginkgo with fan-shaped leaves that turned clear gold before dropping in quiet carpets. In damp places, tree ferns lifted green umbrellas over the understory, while horsetails and club mosses patterned the ground with repeating geometry. Imagine brushing your fingers along a trunk of araucaria, the bark in rugged plates, the resin, scent fresh and slightly sweet, and light falling in slanting bars that gild the dust of pollen. The fern anchor can live here, green upon green, lace upon lace, cool to the eyes and kind to the breath. Seed cones stood where later blossoms would stand. Spores rode the air as lightly as thought, and every breeze carried a memory of rain. If a word feels new, let it stay gentle. It's only a label for a shape or habit your eyes already recognize. The lesson is not hard. It is a starlight whisper through leaves. Follow the water again to the places where land and sea talk to each other all day. Shoreline ripples stitch the margin of tidal flats. Silty estuaries widen into coastal lagoons where reeds tremble and small fish flash like thrown coins. Mangrove-like stands lift roots like basket handles in warm shallows, and quiet reef shelves build pale frameworks that host sponges, corals, and clouds of soft-bodied life. Close to shore, ooids, tiny coated grains, roll and gather layers, the way a pearl gathers sheen, while bivalves and gastropods make their slow signatures in sand and mud. Picture yourself hovering over these calm mosaics and feeling the planet's patient craft, each ripple a record of a breeze, each mud crack a note left by the sun, each strand line a tidy boundary written by the ocean and revised at the next tide. The palette stays restful, greens of marsh and pine, amber light on stones, ochre sands, and teal water under a sky stretched thin and kind. Let the anchors circle back, ancient, fern, and notice how the words align with your breathing, a quiet cadence, even and sure. Because the ground keeps stories, we can speak softly about how fossils form, using friendly steps that feel like folding a blanket. When a leaf or limb or shell is covered quickly by silt, it is sheltered from busy decay, and minerals in the seeping water begin to permineralize the spaces, replacing and preserving grain by grain until a record remains that is half memory, half stone. Sometimes only the outline stays, an impression pressed in mud that later hardens. Sometimes a creature's path survives, trace fossils of footprints marching across a floodplain, each pad a shallow bowl that later fills with a different sand and becomes a cast. Think of pages laid one upon another, sandstone beds and limey layers, so that when the river slices back down through its old work, the pages open and we read. If this sounds intricate, it is also very familiar, like the way your day leaves imprints in a pillow, or the way a breeze leaves patterns in a curtain. The earth remembers in textures. Breathe deeply and feel how calm that is. There is no hurry in stone. The air around these lands held soft sounds you already know. The rustle of needles, the hush of distant surf, the hollow breeze moving along a valley, the thrum of insects as daylight gentles toward dusk. Dragonflies stitched blue arcs above ponds. Beetles navigated bark continents. Later, butterflies would open and close painted wings where magnolia-like leaves gleamed with rain. In open country, herds of quiet browsers and grazers moved with the patience of weather. Sauropods lowering long necks to river willows, stegosaurs shifting to warm those tall plates in morning light, ankylosaurs ambling like living low walls, hadrosaurs harvesting reeds with tidy beaks. Along broad bays, ammonites spiraled through the water column, while quick belemnites traced silver dashes, and over headlands, pterosaurs slid through updrafts like kites with living bones. You don't need names to sleep. The shapes are enough. Let starlight find you through the canopy. Let fern fronds veil the day's last edges. The world is busy and gentle at once, a lullaby written in ecology. If counting soothes you, return to the breath as to a shore you trust. Inhale quietly for 4, and exhale slowly for 6, noticing how the longer release softens your chest and widens your gaze. Do this a few times, then let the counting fade. The way a tide leaves little rings on smooth pebbles and then slips away. If your thoughts wander, picture yourself rising above a map again, tracing temperate belts, tropical belts, and polar margins where light lingers in stretched summers. See open floodplains the color of tea with milk, coastal plains netted with channels, inland seas breathing in and out with subtle changes in level. Hear a distant thunder that never arrives as trouble, only as a bedtime drum far beyond the hills. Smell resin, earth, salt, and rain-wet leaves. The anchors return like stepping stones, ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and each one says the same thing in a different voice. You are safe. You are learning gently. You can drift and rest, while the story tells itself. To keep everything soft, we weave in small, clear ideas and let them rest. Continental drift is slow choreography. Continents meander like wide rivers changing course over millennia. Food webs are handshakes of energy. Sunlight becomes leaf, leaf becomes body, body becomes soil, soil returns to leaf. And nothing in this lesson needs precision to comfort you. Even the word ecosystems can be a cradle image. Conifer forests, shading mossy ground, river deltas feeding silvery estuaries, reef shelves harboring gardens that sway with each pulse of the sea. The planet's Earth heartbeat is the long alternation of building up and wearing down, mountains raised and then softened, shorelines drawn and redrawn, until they are as familiar as the lines on your palm. Let go into that rhythm. The cadence stays even. The images stay safe. The sentences keep you company like footsteps along a sandy path at evening. No need to rush. As this foundation settles under your feet, hold a brief micro-recap like a smooth stone in the hand. A warm greenhouse world. Pangaea, opening to Laurasia, Gondwana, and the Tethys. Forests of conifers, cycads, ginkgo, and ferns. Coasts, stitched with tidal flats and lagoons. Stories pressed into rock by fossilization, and lives moving peacefully across plains and shallows. The anchors have guided your attention. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and they will return whenever you want to feel the thread again. Breathe deeply once more and notice the ease that follows a long exhale, the way a warm breeze lifts the edge of a leaf and sets it down without noise. With the foundations resting beneath our feet, we step into the first, quiet Triassic landscapes, where beginnings speak in soft colors and everything feels like morning after a gentle rain. Let this part be a quiet beginning, a hushed walk into a young world that is still arranging its colors and shapes, where the air feels recently washed and the ground holds soft warmth from a patient sun. We are here to notice, not to measure, to rest, while learning how the first Triassic landscapes settled into their calm. Ancient river fans spreading like open hands, ocean edges breathing in a slow cadence, fern fronds lifting lace to the light, and starlight waiting for evening to gather. There is no pressure to keep anything. Ideas can pass like birds across a wide sky as you breathe gently and let the jaw loosen. Think of this as a shaded path beside water. We'll follow it at an amble, listening for the planet's old heartbeat, while the day cools by degrees. Picture yourself resting in easy shade, back against a smooth stone, watching dust float in a beam of amber light, the way time itself might drift through a quiet room. No need to rush. Just being here is enough. In the warm interiors of this era, seasonal monsoons stitched the year together, carrying soft rain across open spaces that had worn the colors of red beds, iron-rich sediments that baked under broad skies and then softened under cloud shadow. Rivers traveled in braids, parting and rejoining like loose strands of silk laid over the land, leaving pebble bars where the flow paused and ripples where the wind combed the shallows. Some basins held playa lakes that came and went with weather, saucer-flat mirrors that turned the evening purple, then dried to cracked patterns as the sun returned. You can imagine the ground as a quilt, ochre, russet, and sage, stitched with silver threads of water and pinned by mesa profiles on the horizon. Breathe in through the nose, slow and easy, and let the exhale lengthen until it feels like a tide leaving the sand. The word ancient lands like a hand on the shoulder. The word ocean hums somewhere just beyond sight, a promise that the wider world is near, even when the land feels endless. Along these valleys, plants rebuilt the green architecture of shade and shelter with patience. Early conifers raised spires that caught the breeze. Cycads lifted armored crowns. Seed ferns unfurled fronds across damp ground. Ginkgo relatives wore fan-shaped leaves that would later fall as golden pages spread at the feet of trunks. Where waterways lingered, horsetail stands drew straight. Lines through silt, and carpets of ferns softened the borders of stones, laying cool color wherever the light was kind. If the word gymnosperm arrives, let it be a friendly note. Seeds held in open structures, the plant's way of sending the future into air and time without a petal's envelope. Brush your fingers, in your mind, across the patterned bark of a conifer, and feel the language of its plates and ridges. Imagine the faint resin scent that sits between pine and honey, a smell that says the tree is mending itself in slow, steady work. The land is young, yet it already knows how to make shade, how to hold moisture, how to whisper of rain hours after the clouds have gone. Life moved with unhurried intention. First, small dinosaurs stepped lightly, most no taller than your hip, their bipedal silhouettes narrow against the ground's warm light, their heads turning with curious glances toward low shrubs. They paused in left-browsing moments, picked at seed heads, tested the air, then crossed from one patch of shade to the next in a measured rhythm that felt like the day counting itself. Early turtles worked the edges of ponds, shells catching, the last gold as evening stretched. Small mammals, soft-bodied and alert, kept to their burrows and nests, venturing out at the safest margins of dusk to nose among stems and fallen cones. Over the floodplain, pterosaurs appeared toward day's end, not as frightening shape, but as quiet paragliders, soaring at dusk on warm currents that held them with ease. The ground told its stories thoughtfully. Here, a footprint pressed into moist silt, there a path, shared by many feet. The stride a little longer, wherever the gravel lay smooth. Everything worked at a scale that let your breathing match it. Walk outward, in your imagination, to the coastal shelves, where land and water invite each other into conversation. The sea wore a pale teal near shore, deepening by degrees, and on wide tidal pools you could see the sky doubled, cloud on water, water on cloud, until a breeze ruffled the match. Modest reefs sat like quiet gardens, frameworks where sponges, corals, and shelled grazers found places to rest, and where small fish drew silver cursive among branching forms. Beyond these margins, ammonites moved as coiled thoughts in a green world, while soft-bellied swimmers made dim lines that erased themselves a heartbeat later. Nearer to the strand, insects provided an evening soundscape. Dragonfly shimmer in blue arcs, a cicada chorus warming and cooling with the air, quiet wings closing as the light thinned. If you listen closely, you will hear nothing urgent, only the long, even whisper of gentle waves, and the occasional hollow tone of wind moving along a low bluff. Let fern and starlight be your touchstones here, simple markers that remind the mind to soften. When rain arrived, it arrived with kindness. The first drops ticked on leaves and feathery fronds, laying beads that slid to the tip and fell onto velvety moss, leaving a rich mineral smell that made the ground feel newly made. In shallow places, the water drew rings around falling drops. Then those rings touched and became patterns that drifted to shore. On exposed mud, you could find the scattered raindrop prints later, set like delicate punctuation. Even the light had tricks of mercy. Lavender dusk poured between thin clouds, touching pebble fans in dry channels and waking a brief rainbow arc along a distant canyon amber wall. Through it all, there was the sense of a world establishing habits, gradual change, quiet diversity, forms ambling from one niche to another, and the land practicing its own names until they sounded right. Take a breath that fills, then a breath that empties, and feel the chest settle lower with the longer exhale. The body understands these scenes without study. Not every day looked the same, yet the rhythm stayed reliable. Some mornings opened on windless clay pans that glowed like unopened letters. Some afternoons borrowed valley breezes that slid from high edges and combed the grass in meanders. Some evenings invited moonrise early, laying a road across pale teal water that asked nothing of you but attention. On a dune's shoulder, reed edges wrote soft lines that shifted with the hour. In an oasis, cool shade gathered where palms and conifers shared a sliver of groundwater, and the air there sounded like a page being turned. Overhead, a sky vault arced so generously that distance felt like a companion rather than a challenge, and high points kept their mountain profiles in simple, reassuring shapes. If an unfamiliar term appears, archosaurs, for instance, hold it lightly, a family name for many reptilian forms of the time, from crocodile kin to the early dinosaurs. We're watching now. The names can stay soft. The pictures do the work. Close to the ground, the small movements mattered. A beetle gleam along bark. A moth glide past a stem with leaf scars in tidy spirals. The flicker of wings as something tiny tested the edge of a puddle and decided to wait. On the sand near a current's curl, a sandbar curve offered a sheltered step. Under the water's skin, rippled silt made patterns that slid forward, even when your eyes said everything was still. From soft footfall to soft footfall, you could walk beside the river without leaving anything but faint pressure in dust that would lift and erase in an hour. The earth heartbeat here was not a drum, but a long sigh. Out over the flats, back across the reeds, unmistakable once noticed and easy to forget because it asked for nothing. Say the anchors quietly, if you like. Ancient for the wide story, ocean for the steady hush, fern for cool color, starlight for the calm to come. When the light softened enough to show the first few stars, the land did not grow dangerous. It merely grew quieter. Evening winds balanced the day's warmth. Dawn calls moved to the far edges and waited for morning. Somewhere in a burrow line, nest tending continued with tiny sounds like fabric being folded. The river murmur stayed, stitching the dark with silver thread, and wind in pines made a hollow music that laid a hand on thought and pressed it smooth. Breathe once with extra patience now. Fill to a comfortable place. release with a slow count, and let the count fade off before you reach 0. The way a shoreline erases numbers at the lip of water, what remains is a simple feeling. Restful continuity. Shapes repeat, patterns recur, and the story keeps its gentle promise that nothing important needs chasing. If you would like a tiny micro-recap to hold, let it be this smooth arrangement of images. A young landscape finding balance, river braids loosening and tightening like a relaxed hand, desert oases and gentle dunes sharing space with reed beds and fern shade, early conifers, seed ferns, cycads, and ginkgo relatives building rooms of green, small dinosaurs and early turtles moving with care, small mammals treating dusk like a kindly hallway, pterosaurs writing evening cursive on the sky, tidal pools and modest reefs exchanging light with motion, rain writing temporary notes, and stone saving the longer story. Beneath, the anchors have circled us without fuss. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and each return has been a handrail for attention. Now we let the hand slip free. The world grows still enough to hear distant fossil whispers, not literal voices, but the patient language of layers that will one day show what passed. Here, your breathing has its own calm tempo, and the sentences follow, flowing without corners, inviting you to drift or listen, or both. If the mind wants a picture for tomorrow, it can keep one. Forests grow taller as time leans forward. Seas widen where land relaxes, and the colors deepen until shade becomes a room and rain becomes a bell. Forests grow taller and seas widen. Triassic calm opens into the full green hush of the Jurassic. Let this stretch of night be a gentle walk beneath towering green, a guided look at the Jurassic, when forests were deep and rivers curved through, meadows without hurry, when warm showers stitched the hours together and the land glowed after rain. The purpose is simple and soft, to sense the fullness of this time the way you might sense a garden at dusk, learning by looking, resting while you listen. Settle in, and allow your breathing to lengthen as you picture yourself under trees. Calm traveler lying on springy ground, while light filters through layered fronds. There is no need to rush. The story moves at the speed of leaves swaying in a breeze. The anchors return like small lights along a path. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and each one steadies attention without effort. You are welcome to let facts land like feathers and float and drift away again if sleep wants them. Above you, the canopy rises in textured tiers, conifers stacked like pillars, araucaria crowns bristling with orderly spirals, and tree ferns lifting green umbrellas that soften every angle of the forest floor. The color is a deep, living emerald, not a single shade, but a chorus. Moss on fallen trunks, lacquered needles, and lacework fronds that hold the day's last gold. In that filtered glow, amber shafts of light lean between trunks and widen into sapphire pools wherever water rests, so the eye keeps meeting sky on the ground. If gymnosperms ever felt abstract, Imagine them simply as seed-bearers without petals, offering the next generation from cones and crowns, practical and generous in a world that treasures green. Along bark ridges, resin gathers in clear droplets, faintly honeyed, and the air carries a clean perfume. Resin, wet earth, fresh rain, the scent of a planet after work, exhaling. The forest's language is quiet. Canopy hush, leaf patter, and the small sounds of life moving with courtesy. Weather here has a heartbeat you can hear if you're still. The gentle cycle of monsoon rhythms that draw warm showers across hills and valleys, leaving silver threads on rock and a mild steam that braids with light. Valleys hold mist, not as a warning, but as a blanket for the low ground, and when sun returns, it builds the familiar arc we call a rainbow, a simple bridge from shadow to shine. Rivers take their cue and bend around knolls, gliding more than rushing, drawing pebble, rings that mark where eddies catch and rest. Think of the climate as a long inhalation of warmth, punctuated by soothing exhalations of rain. Think of the year as a circle rather than a ladder, every hour holding hands with the next. Breathe with that idea. Quiet inhale for 4, slower exhale for 6, and feel how the longer release invites the shoulders to loosen, the gaze to widen, and the mind to set something down. Ancient is the pace. Fern is the color. On open flats near water, the serene giants move like hills in motion. Sauropods browse with deliberate grace, their long-necked silhouettes drifting among crown branches while their tails sway slow to keep balance, a pendulum that measures calm instead of time. When the ground is soft after rain, their footprints hold water and stand like small ponds, mirrors for the sky, and bowls for insects to sip. Nearby, stegosaurs stand angled to the light, the tall plates along their backs catching warmth, the waystones stored day for evening. It's an image of gentle thermoregulation rather than spectacle, a creature making a comfortable choice. Herds do not stampede, they move gently, pausing to drink, pausing to watch one another, pausing because the world isn't asking for haste. Everything is shade-seeking and water-sipping, coexistence written in slow gestures and careful steps. If the word herbivore feels clinical, rename it quietly: leaf friend, meadow walker, reed harvester, work that causes no alarm. Overhead the sky is a vast, kindly room. Pterosaurs discover the smooth rails of rising air and glide as if they were leaves that learned intention. Early birds land on branches with precise feet and glance downslope as if the valley were a diary they are writing with beak and feather. Near ponds, dragonflies skim like tide blue sparks, their lenses full of maps we can't see. As flowering plants begin their long arrival later, butterflies will join, folding and unfolding color as gently as someone turning pages. Everywhere the forest writes itself in quiet detail, moss making cushions along lichen-silvered logs, pollen drift-dusting a twig like golden flour, lichen crusts painting pale continents on rock. If you listen, what you hear is a gentle chorus, wings low, feet thoughtful, leaves applauding mist, sounds that arrive without edges and leave without echoes. Follow a trail of cool air to the epicontinental seas, where the ocean touches the land in shallow lagoons that wander across broad platforms. The phrase simply means seas that have slipped onto the continents, spreading like calm glass across a shallow dish, and because they are shallow, they glow with color and warmth. Here, the water is water glass in the sun, and mud satin where it folds against shore. Here, reef gardens build patient scaffolds that blur the frontier between stone and life. In the upper water, ammonite spirals turn and think in coils, unhurried. Deeper, belemnite darts write brief punctuation that the tide edits into flow. The distant surf is a soft seam at the horizon, and the sky above it wears slow cloud drift that leaves the light in long pieces. If a definition helps you sleep, keep it feather light. Reefs are busy neighborhoods where everything sways to the same music. Shells are rooms carried by travelers who prefer to bring home along. Plankton are the small composers that keep the symphony fed. Return with me to shade, where a small stream makes a river glass seam through the green. The bank leans, the branch shadows cross like handwriting, and the ground is a cushion of moss, stitched into a root web that holds the hillside gently together. When soft drizzle returns, it gathers into sunlit mist the moment the cloud thins, and the air turns into lace you can breathe. Frequent stones along the water feel like warm sleeping animals, and everyone keeps its promise to cool the fingers just enough. Look at the fern stare, those repeating leaflets that climb a central line, and notice how the pattern tells your thoughts to organize themselves without trying. Breathe deeply and let the breath leave with a longer glide, as though it prefers the valley. There is no need to rush. If you want a moment of friendly science, let it be told in pictures rather than lists. In a warm, greenhouse-tilted climate, moisture cycles like a familiar lullaby. Air rises from lowland water, condenses into cloud as it drifts toward ridge lines, and returns as gentle rain that feeds the rivers that feed the sea, that gives itself back to air. Energy flows in the same spirit. Sunbeams become sugars inside leaves. Leaves become bodies in herbivores at ease. Bodies return to soil by ways that disturb nothing loudly. Soil lifts new leaves, and the circle tightens with gratitude. The words, ancient, timeless, and eternal, are not exaggerations here. They are descriptions of rhythm, a drum beaten so slowly you can mistake it for silence. When you feel the impulse to measure, try this instead. Count one inhale, count one exhale, then let the numbers dissolve into the hush and rest that follows. The forest remembers for you. We stay with sensory truth because it welcomes sleep and keeps learning kind. Under crown light, needles glow. Along a fern-lit path, water beads cling like tiny lamps. Across a ben's bank curve, silt paints pale crescents that tell where last night's current paused to breathe. A low ridgeline cuts the distance into friendly portions, and a valley veil of vapor threads from pool to pool until it dissolves. Trace your fingers in the mind a long bark scroll textures that hold centuries in ridges and scars. Then let your hand fall back to the ground and feel stone warmth through moss. If the wind shifts, it finds the reed hush and carries it to you in thin ropes of sound, which your ears receive as a promise that nothing urgent is approaching. You are in a world arranged for patient movement and long recovery, where the tallest trunks are trunk pillars, and the smallest seeds are plans delivered in envelopes of light. When evening tilts, colors deepen without drama. Twilight, calm settles between boles. Soft footfalls of large bodies move as gently as falling leaves. Air cools into a precise cool breeze that keeps sleep near. In a clearing, the pond mirror gives the sky back to itself, with one imperfection, the quiet tattoo of droplets as something broad and peaceful steps in to drink. Up above, sky arcs stretch until they feel dimensional, and you might believe you could slide along them like a river if you closed your eyes. If thinking turns toward time, let it expand rather than stack. Millions of years arranged like rings in wood. Readable if you sit long enough. Whisper the anchors as you feel drowsiness gather. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and allow each word to close one more door behind you. A brief micro-recap rests the mind. This was a lush conifer forest world, draped in mist and tuned by warm rains. Sauropods and stegosaurs practiced ease rather than spectacle. Birds and pterosaurs wrote quiet lines upon open air. Epicontinental seas shimmered as shallow rooms of light. Reef gardens swayed. The canopy hush and river hush braided into one long comfort. You learned by seeing, and you rested by naming what you saw in kinder words. The breath is steady now. The sentences carry less weight. The pictures hold themselves together without your effort. Following the rivers forward, blossoms gather color. On the horizon, the variety of the Cretaceous draws near. From open skies and flowering fields, we step closer to the ground, to the quiet, daily rhythms of living. Long pause. Let this section unfold like a bedside lamp turned low, a tender collection of moments gathered from an ordinary day where nothing demands alarm, and everything leans toward rest. Our aim is modest and kind, to notice the close textures and quiet choices of living creatures, then let the noticing soften into calm. Picture yourself listening from the shade of a low bough near a slow river bend, where dew lingers on fronds and light moves like a hand over woven grass. In the cool of morning, downy feathers touch sun-warmed rock and hold the warmth the way a mug holds tea. Skin shows a faint scale sheen that catches a single thread of brightness, then lets it go. A parent's body shelters a mound of leaves and straw, eggshells tucked in careful geometry. Steam rises lightly from the nest as if the earth were humming. The day begins without hurry. The scene is ancient in its simplicity, and the world feels held together by patience, fern shadow, and distant starlight still fading from the sky. Watch how attention moves from broad shapes to details that reward. Quiet eyes. Footpads touch damp soil and leave half-moons that fill with a little water, then reflect the canopy like tiny mirrors you could carry in your palm. A throat vibrates with a soft call, answered from somewhere behind the reeds. The sound is less a message than a ribbon tying one body to another across a few safe steps. Brooding looks like stillness, yet it is steady work. Turning, tucking, settling, an art of keeping the possible future at a comfortable temperature. When the sun climbs, the colony leans toward shade at noon, trading places with fluent ease, as if everybody knew the choreography from memory. Breathe deeply once, letting the rib cage widen, release slowly, and feel the jaw loosen until teeth barely touch. The ocean may be miles away, yet its hush feels present in the rhythm of these gestures, a long memory of tides traveling through bone. By midday, movement is small and precise, like handwriting practiced on clean paper. Water sipping happens, where the bank shelves into a clear lip. A careful step sends out ripples that push rings across the surface until they meet the river murmur coming back. A youngster tests a scatter of seeds, finds one sweet fragment, and returns to the cool safety of a shoulder. The motion says, "I am here, you are near, everything is fine." Social grooming is quiet music, the brush of muzzle along neck, the slow sorting of filaments and fibers, the pause that lets a heartbeat be felt through skin. Air smells of warm straw and damp soil, touched by resin, and a little sweet flower left open beneath the leaves. You can sit with this and say nothing. You can count your breath if counting helps. Then let counting fade until it is only the pleasure of air moving in and out. Ancient light rests on fern edges and remains untroubled. The micro-worlds carry their own steady theater. Along the path of the nest, ant trails draw precise lanes that braid and unbraid without collision. On a soft, sun-soaked face of timber, a small termite mound shows pale repairs where the night's rain softened corners. Butterflies hold their wings in folded tents on a stem, waiting until the temperature asks them to open. When they do, it is quiet as a page turning. Above, pollen dust drifts in glittering columns where light pours between fronds. Beside it, a bead of amber begins at a nick in the bark and thickens the way a thought becomes a memory. Leaf drip continues long after the cloud is gone, stitching the pause between showers with a pattern you can follow until you forget you were following. Now take a breath you can measure. Inhale for 4, exhale for 6, and allow the longer release to settle the shoulders. Then let numbers dissolve into comfort. Even weather seems to care for the scene. A slow rain rhythm arrives, no more than a conversational patter, and the floor of the grove answers with puddle rings that grow, meet, and become smooth again. Smells brighten, wet mineral, leaf sugar, a sip of resin, and somewhere a wing shakes itself into order, dropping beads that leap once then vanish. Nest mounds darken, but the heat under them holds. You can see it in the way a guarding body slightly lifts for air and settles again, like a blanket fluffed for a sleeping child. Beyond the nearest trunks, new fronds unfurl with the patience of clocks that prefer circles to ticks, and a fine steam rises where sun-warmed rock meets the fresh wash of water. The day never presses. It offers rooms, cool shadow when eyes want dimness, stone warmth when hands want reassurance, and over everything, that quiet suggestion remains. Rest, soften, let go, as if written in the angle of every stem. As the light turns honey low, creatures drift toward places that feel like home, even when they are only shapes of familiarity. Evening return is a necklace of arrivals, careful steps, soft footfalls through reeds, small pauses to listen, a shared look that means nothing needs changing. The night hush begins at the edges, first a thinning of insects, then a lowering of voices, and the air cools until breath ghosts for a moment near a narrow muzzle, fading as quickly as it appears. Wing rustle settles into wing fold on a high branch. A tail taps once and rests. Hatchling peeps, if they happen, are contained, soft as cloth, touching cloth. Above the river bend, the sky turns a precise blue that moves imperceptibly toward indigo, and the first stars show the suggestion of a path. Think of starlight as a friendly distance, far enough to keep the thoughts small, close enough to keep the room together. Picture yourself listening, and notice how ears seem to widen. Near the bank the last drink of daylight gathers. Puddle mirrors keep their little skies until a reed leans, and light fractures into manageable pieces. Immediately the surface repairs itself, a lesson in how calm returns without being forced. A body shifts on mossy ground, finds a better angle, and stills. Another breathes with an audible soft blink, timing the exhale, slow and even. Smells settle into layers, straw, rain-cleaned air, the faintest flower, while temperatures draw a thin quilt across open places. Inside the nest, brood care continues by touch instead of sight, a language as old as the earth heartbeat. If you want a second breath, a reset, take it now. In for 4, out for 6, and feel the longer letting go as a door held open by a patient friend. Then allow the door to swing to on its own, quiet and complete. Let memory find simple anchors, so it can keep only what soothes, close textures, feather filaments, smooth shell, footpad impressions holding sky, quiet behaviors, shade-seeking, water-sipping, grooming that means we belong together, micro-worlds, pollen glint, amber bead, and choreography that keeps lines straight without orders, weather and senses, leaf drip, raindrop lace, sense of warm straw and damp soil. Across it all, the steady confidence of an ancient day repeating itself, the far ocean implied in the regularity of breath, the fern edge marking coolness and care. The arrival of starlight promising that night is only another room in the same house. If a picture wants to stay, let it. If it wants to drift, trust the drift. Either way, the cadence continues. soft and even, sentences lengthening and folding like blankets turned down for sleep. From these near tender details, we rise again to the wide canvas of time, to changes that move as slowly as clouds. Let this chapter tilt your gaze toward the largest canvas, where change writes in patient handwriting and time stretches into comfortable distance. The purpose is simply to watch the world rearrange itself without alarms, to feel long rhythms as supportive rather than stern, and to let knowledge arrive the way evening does, gradually, with edges that soften as you breathe. Imagine resting just above a pale globe spread with map greens and sea blues, your point of view unhurried, your attention floating like a feather. Continents sit like puzzle pieces that have never been snapped tight. Seaways gleam where water explores the interior of land. Cloud bands slide along familiar lanes as if remembering yesterday's routes. Say the anchors quietly to yourself. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight. And notice how the words anchor the mind while leaving it free. You are here to listen to slow processes that prefer the comfort of millennia. Nothing insists. Everything breathes. Across this calm sphere, continental drift continues like a procession that will not be hurried. Plates carry continents as rafts carry gardens, gliding on rock that behaves like clay when years stack into millions. New seaways open to connect. Basins and coastlines draw fresh curves where the shelf edge meets light. Elsewhere, land rises into mountains that first appear as soft horizons, then gather definition as weather shapes their faces. Think of ridge blue fading to valley green in bands, the palette changing with height and moisture rather than with drama, and think of rivers discovering easier paths around these lifts rather than cutting straight through. Desert ochres occupy their wide rooms while the trade winds ferry air like polite couriers. Monsoon paths migrate a little north, a little south, answering the quiet persuasion of sunlight as it redistributes warmth. All of it adds up to a map in gentle motion, a steady rearrangement that whispers rather than shouts. Where land and water touch, the story writes in edges. Coastlines reshape by a handful of grains and a few inches of level, yet the work compounds until bays quiet into lagoons and dune chains step inland like thoughtful dancers. Rivers meander, smoothing corners and laying silt ribbons that will become tomorrow's farms and future floodplains. Deltas build into broad hands that carry sediment to the sea, their fingers splitting and rejoining in a geometry that calms the eye. Offshore, reefs expand along the shelf, not as sudden walls but as neighborhoods that learn the light and register small changes in temperature, salinity, and clarity. Even the driftwood line on a beach remembers wind direction and storm height, an understated ledger of passing weathers that teaches without scolding. Stand above it all and let your breath mirror the motion, wider on the inhalation, longer on the release, like a bay filling and emptying under a mild moon. Climate, never fixed, always patterned, slides its belts with the gentleness of a curtain being drawn a small measure, then drawn back. Temperature bands move a quiet degree toward higher latitudes. Rain belts wander to meet new highlands. Season lengths adjust until familiar months feel longer or shorter, yet still friendly to leaves and roots. In response, forests migrate at the pace of seeds and saplings. Forest fronts advance into cooler ground, while meadow spreads occupy the clearings they leave behind. Some hills dress in fern and conifer again after a warmer swing. Some lowlands welcome broader leaves. Where water lingers, none of it feels panicked. It is the planet shifting in its chair, trying on arrangements that suit slightly altered light. From above, you can trace cloud streams that mark the journeys of moisture, and you can sense how ocean surfaces hold heat for a season, then pass it to air with kindness. Partnerships deepen. Pollination, once a scattered convenience, grows into an intricate tapestry of exchanges, petal maps, guiding visitors to nectar while pollen paths ride leg hairs and feathers toward new addresses. Seed journeys multiply. Some seed rafts float down rivers. Some wear wings and spin onto mossy ground. Some travel in sweetness and are carried, remembered, and placed elsewhere by beaks and bellies that leave payment as soil. Quietly, forms diversify and features refine, not as sudden inventions, but as small improvements that make living gentler under particular skies. Tails balance differently in windier flats. Teeth widen a little where reed advance fills marsh edges. Colors shift toward bark and leaf where shade enlarges its rooms. Adaptations here feel like choices made by a very patient tailor, hemming sleeves, letting out seams, and favoring fabrics that breathe. Underfoot long earth cycles turn, their wheels with reassuring endurance. Soils build as fallen leaves, and weathered minerals braid into a loose weave that holds water and welcomes roots. New minerals arrive as rock peels in thin pages. The materials return to stone again, where pressure writes deeper chapters. In forests, carbon settles into trunks, branches, and litter. It also tucks into the stone warmth below, the ledger balanced by new growth that wakes with each season. In air, oxygen rises and falls within gentle bounds, tuned by green surfaces and sunlit water, where small producers conduct the quiet symphony. When you think of cycles, picture circles, not the sense of going nowhere, but of returning with knowledge. Your own breath participates. Draw in lightly, then let it travel outward in a longer stream, and feel how the earth heartbeat is echoed in your chest. Let your viewpoint drift higher, as if you could lean back into the starlight and see the planet's lines all at once. Contour lines on mountains red like fingerprints. Shoreline arcs reveal bays that prefer calm over clamor. Chalk bands and limestone rises wrap shelves like pale scarves at the margins of blue. Here and there, sand lenses, clay layers, and pebble bars show where water sorted grains by patience rather than force. Cloud whites gather and release with a cadence you can feel in your shoulders. Gentle waves comb beaches in repeating rows that never quite match, like hand-woven cloth. The colors remain restful, map greens against sea blues, desert creams and ochres shading into evening lavender, so the eye travels far without effort. Repeat the anchors again, low and sure, ancient for duration, ocean for hush, fern for shade, starlight. For the spacious ceiling above it all, because stories hide in growth, rings and layers. We can read time without numbers. A log cut by chance shows ringed wood that thickens during years of grace and narrows during seasons of restraint. A cliff face displays layered rocks like pages that remember coastlines moving, rivers changing course, and estuary hush becoming salt water routine. Across deltas, the river silver braids anew each generation, laying silt in lace patterns. A migrating forest will one day anchor with roots. Along an old shoreline, driftwood lines stack and blur. Behind them, dune chains trap seeds and give them stillness enough to begin, even when something seems sudden up close. From this height, you can see the gradual steps that prepared the way. Take another gentle reset. Draw breath in to a comfortable fullness. Release it a little longer than before, and let shoulders lower as if a bag were set down. For memory's ease, keep a quiet bundle of touch points, continents drifting while seaways lace through lowlands, mountains rising into soft horizons that adjust wind and rain, climate belts sliding like sashes, inviting forest migrations and meadow returns, pollination partnerships and seed journeys, writing the roots of tomorrow's groves, reefs expanding, coastlines reshaping, and rivers meandering into new handwriting, soils forming, minerals cycling, carbon resting in trunks, while oxygen travels the air with kindness. The lesson wears a calm face. Even immense changes can move with courtesy. The tone stays level. The cadence holds. If a single word must represent the feeling, let it be timeless, not frozen, but patient, carrying past and future in the same open hand. The great picture narrows now, as if the globe you were watching chose to turn its lamp toward the present. Distances shorten, details sharpen, without becoming loud. The air around you keeps its kindness while the horizon inches closer. The anchor words can settle like 4 small stones in a pocket. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and you can stand with them on a shoreline that feels familiar, carrying a soft echo of everything you have seen. The map settles gently into the present. Our steps return to today, carrying quiet echoes of the dinosaur earth. Let this closing chapter arrive like a late lamp dimming, a quiet gratitude that gathers as the room settles and breath lengthens. Our aim is to notice the ways the dinosaur earth still speaks in the present, through stone, through living leaves, through places that invite unhurried attention, and to let that noticing carry you toward sleep. Settle in even deeper, and picture yourself walking softly through evening air, the day folded away, the mind unburdened. The anchors return in a gentle circuit. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, each word a small hand on the shoulder. You are not required to remember everything. You are invited to feel the thread. We began with welcome. We close with thanks. The tone stays low, and the world is kind. Stones keep stories, and they tell them without raising their voices. In a museum's hush, a slab holds the delicate trace of leaves, a lace of veins pressed into silt that turned to rock, the edges so fine you expect them to flutter. Nearby, petrified wood shows rings you can count with a fingertip, each band an old season that hardened into quartz and color, the grain preserved like music written into glass. Behind another pane, a bead of amber carries a small insect, its legs tucked, its wings clear as memory, a golden drop that fell and forgot to fall. Fossils do not shout. They lean toward you and wait. A guide might say, mineral replacement, or imprint, but you can let the words be simple. Time placed a hand on softness and kept the shape. The feeling is enough. Breathe deeply and let your shoulders ease with the exhale. Beyond hallways and glass, the land itself opens pages. Riverbank exposures tilt in the amber of late day, layers stepping like quiet terraces, sand laid by one flood, silt from a slower season, a ripple cast holding yesterday's wind in hardened waves. On a lower ledge, a trackway arc curves toward the water, footprints spaced with a calm stride that makes your own steps slow. You can follow their rhythm without thought, heel to ball, as if walking with someone who knew the path long ago. A thin sheet of light shivers over the current, and the river murmur folds into the air like a low lullaby. The anchors are present, even here, ancient in the measured sequence of layers, ocean in the steady hush of flowing water, fern in the green that brackets the view, starlight promised in the pale sky, drawing evening closer. Modern echoes meet you in familiar places, and their friendliness is the point. Ferns in gardens bend the same way their ancestors bent beneath heavy rain, the fronds unrolling like careful handwriting on green paper. Ginkgo trees on streets lift fans that will turn clean gold when the season leans, each leaf a small reminder that deep time can live on a city corner. Conifers in parks hold resin in sun-warmed grooves, a scent that always feels like the air has been washed far away. Coastal cliffs of chalk rise like pale walls where countless small shells became limestone, and reef limestones lift outcrops that once cradled gardens under blue water. If you stand where sea hush reaches the base of those slopes, you can taste salt and light together, and feel the present brushing against the ancient in a way that requires nothing but breathing. Gull far, sky pale, the line between then and now grows soft. Museums are good for slow looking. Picture yourself on a museum bench, a seat with a pleasant squeak, and a view of glass cases arranged like tidy windows. A soft spotlight warms a stone slice, where a fern vein wanders through rock. The label speaks in friendly phrases, and you read only the words you need. Around you, voices are low, families visiting, scientists listening, footsteps that prefer carpet to echo, late afternoon filters through tall panes, and dust glimmers like tiny constellations that forgot their names. You do not have to learn. You can simply stay. Place your hands on your thighs. Feel the fabric. Feel the mild warmth. Breathe deeply. In for 4, out for 6, and notice the ripple in the belly as air leaves. Let your jaw soften. Let your shoulders lower a notch. You can carry the story in your pocket. Imagine a smooth pocket stone lifted from a legal field find or from the museum shop. A small round with a shell curl set in its center, or a slice of petrified wood that catches light. It is enough to hold it. The skin reads its temperature. The mind reads its patience. If it's evening, step outdoors with that kindness in your hand and walk a little way. Chalk paths under cliff grass feel springy, and the ocean trades breath with the shore in even strokes. Somewhere, not loud, a distant thunder rolls and dissolves. The sky stores starlight for later, and the horizon is a long exhale. You have arrived where learning and rest agree on pace. Quiet places invite mindful visiting, and the rules are simple: slow walking, soft touch, respect for time. Stand beside a sandstone mesa glowing like baked bread in a low sun, and watch. Shadow, climb its steps. Sit by an evening river and trace the thin ringed wood on a washed log, each circle a patient year. Place your palm against a warm boulder and feel how stone keeps daylight, offering it back with great restraint. Trees nearby breathe you into their rhythm, wind in pines moving like water, leaf shade copying water's patterns across earth. This is how to listen to fossil whispers, with your whole body and no rush. The earth heartbeat is present in the repetition of shapes, in the comfort of patterns returning, in the predictable curve of shore and bend and path. If memory wants a small bundle, let it gather these. Stone that remembers, leaves that span millennia, coastlines that carry yesterday inside today, rooms where the story is held safely for quiet eyes. We began with a greeting beside ancient water. We wandered through forests and rains and meadows. We rested near nests and tracks and pools. We watched the map turn softly toward the present. The anchors kept their promise. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight. Touch points for a mind that prefers gentle circles. When the episode ends, they can stay with you like 4 round pebbles in a dish on a windowsill, familiar and easy to reach. Settle in even deeper, and notice how the chest rises without effort and descends like a small tide, returning to sand. Before we close, allow one last breath cue to fold into the room. Inhale to a comfortable fullness, counting softly if that helps. Let the exhale lengthen by a step, like a door easing shut with perfect balance. If a thought asks to be kept, set it kindly on a shelf. If a thought wants to go, open your palm and let it travel. There is no need to rush. You have followed a slow journey, and the journey will continue without you pushing. This is the permission. Drift to dreams Rest well, let go, and know that the world you walked tonight will be waiting whenever you return. When you imagine tomorrow, picture ordinary places made luminous by what you learned. Ginkgo on a sidewalk, lifting fans to a pale morning, a fern shining after a soft rain, a museum corner glowing like a small hearth, a reef limestone ledge along a trail catching late gold. Each one is a bridge, not to the past, but to continuity. Each one says the story is still telling itself, slowly and kindly. You do not have to be there for every chapter. You have already heard enough to feel the cadence. The anchors settle once more. Ancient, ocean, fern, starlight, and the room hears itself quiet down. The lights in this story lower to a calm blue. The hallway outside, the mind grows still. Night settles, breath slows, eyes rest, and the world holds steady while you sleep. The ancient ocean hush remains as you breathe. The fern shadow and starlight linger. Good night.